Okay, so in the first video of this tutorial series, we are going to check out how we can create a new project, and also we are going to see how we can create a new session. Especially this tutorial is purely for paint workflow inside Silhouette. So let's see how we can create a paint session inside the software and then proceed with our work. Okay, so I'm inside Silhouette version 2022.0.2. As soon as I open the software, I can see this interface here. Opening up Silhouette software may vary from company to company or pipeline to pipeline, but whenever you launch the software, you are going to see this splash screen. So inside you can see few buttons over here: new project, open project, existing project, and exit. So if you want to create a new project, you can click on this button and start a fresh workflow. But if you have an existing project, you can browse through this button, that is open project. But if you want to open up some of your recent files pretty quickly, you can access that through this pull down list, existing project. And also we have exit button. We can click this to exit the software. I'm going to create a new project. So let's click on this button. Here we have a pop-up where we can name our Silhouette project. And also we can choose the path where we can save this project. I'm going to name this as intro about Silhouette, and I already chose a path for my project. In most companies, you don't have to worry too much about following the right naming convention or choosing the right folder structure. It will be automatically taken care inside the pipeline. But please try to follow the right naming convention and the right folder structure whenever you're working, which is obviously defined in your working pipeline. This is very important, so please be aware of that. Once you're happy with the name as well as the path, you can simply click on create project. You cannot see any major difference in the interface right after that. Obviously you can see the path where you just saved your Silhouette project here, and also we have the source window here. We can import a footage to this, and later to that create a new session. Then that's it, we can start the work. Now let's try to import a footage into Silhouette. As I just mentioned before, we have source window here, which we can make use of for importing a single frame or a sequence of image as much as you need. So let's see how we can do that. There are many ways to do the same. I'm going to show you one by one. At first, just go to File, Import, Media. You can select the footage which you are just going to use in your work. Open. There you go. You just imported a footage inside the source window. Let's delete this. Come over here. There is a button import. Click on that, select the footage, click on open. There it is. Again, it is imported. Delete this. The most used and most convenient way of importing a sequence or importing the images into Silhouette is just by doing double click on source window, select the footage, click on open. That's very easy. Now let's see few other options inside the source window. We have some buttons over here. You can use this for creating a new session. You can use this for creating a new sequence, which I'm not going to explain in this tutorial series. Also, we have search bar here. Let's suppose if we have hundreds of images here or hundreds of footages inside source bin, and you want to find one particular footage, you can type in the name of that footage and you can select that very easily using the search bar. Also, we have some customized view options here. This is list view. This is list view with thumbnail. You can see the thumbnail slightly very small over here, but I prefer this to keep in thumbnail view so that you can see the footage. Once you have imported the footage inside the source window and you are done with the importing, now the next step is to create a new session. So let's see how we can do that. Just like importing a footage, we can create a session in various ways too. Let's see that one by one. Before creating a session, always make sure that you have selected the footage which you are going to use in your work. I have selected the footage. You can go over here, session, new session, and the shortcut for that is Ctrl+N. Let's click on this option. Here we have a pop-up where we can fill up the name, we can choose the template workspace, format, and all these details. Cancel. Let's see some of the other ways which we can do the same. Make sure you select the footage. Come over here. There's a button to create a new session. Click that. You have the same pop-up. Is there any other ways? Yes. Make sure you select the footage. Just drag that into the trees window. There you go. You have the same session pop-up. Now let's see what are the options inside this pop-up. We can name this session inside here. Let's suppose if you are doing some roto task, you can name this as character roto. Let's suppose if I'm doing some paint task, maybe I can type this as paint. Renaming session is very important so that you can, find this specific session from the long list of sessions available after you start working. I have named this session as paint. Let's choose a template. By default, it should be none. Make sure you're selecting the paint template so that, When you create a session, automatically a roto and paint node will be available in your workspace. I have chosen the template as paint. Also, you have an option for composite and roto. So if you are doing a roto work, make sure you are selecting the roto template. So I'm selecting paint as my template. So choosing a workspace depends on your work style. I always keep this as streamlined or default, or I have my customized workspace roto paint. But for this tutorial purpose, I'm just going to keep this as default, and all other options are automatically filled up from the metadata of this source, which you just used for creating this session. So you can see the size of this plate is 3840 by 2160, and the pixel aspect ratio is 1. Duration is 30 frames at 23.976 fps. And the footage starts at frame 1. So once you are convinced all the details are accurate and you have typed the name of the session, you can just simply click on OK. Importing a footage into the source bin and creating a new session is very easy. I hope you understood the technique. Okay, so a bonus tip is that we can import a new footage and do playback without creating a new session. Let's see how we can do that. Double click on the source bin. I'm going to import a new footage into the source window or source bin. Open. Here you can see the new footage has been imported. So how we can play back this image or this sequence without creating a new session? We can just double click on this footage and we can do playback and check how this footage looks like, or we can even analyze the footage. I hope this tip is super useful in your work. Welcome back to the second episode of Silhouette Paint Masterclass. Yep, it's been a while since I made my last video. I've been blessed with a baby boy recently and I was kind of, spending time mostly with my family. So here I am continuing the series, and in this episode, we are going to check out different tools or different brushes available inside Silhouette Paint interface. We are not going to explore much of these tools, but instead we are just going to see the list of tools available in this specific episode. And we will explore much of this in the later episodes for sure. Okay, in the previous episode, I already discussed about creating a new project, importing the footage, and also about creating a new session as well. So here I already imported a footage and also created a new session for paint. As you can see in the node trees window, we have the footage, and as I choose the paint template as the session template, here I have roto node as well as paint node. Both are interconnected. What's the use of this? I already made lots of tutorials about this, but in this tutorial I'm going to cover about this, so don't worry about that. And also we have an output node already attached. I'm going to click on the paint node. That means just double click on the paint node, or we can click on this gizmo right over here. And now we are inside the paint node. On screen left side, we can see different icons over here. All these are different types of brushes with different properties. Let's see one by one what these tools are and what all the properties are. The first one among these is black and white. We can simply hover our mouse over this icon and see it's black and white, and the shortcut for that is B. So this is dodge, and the shortcut for that is Alt Shift D in Windows. So I'm going to explain what is black and white, and right now our brush is selected as black and white. First of all, I'm going to draw and see what this is. Nothing is happening. Why? Because our viewer selection is inside roto. So you can click on this icon. Now you can see there's a black and white stroke already painted, and inside the auto paint pane you can see there is a history. We have drawn a black and white stroke here. So as the name suggests, black and white brush creates black and white strokes. And also we have properties for this. There are different modes we can select for create this kind of black and white strokes. So inside this pull down menu we can see luminance, average, red, green, blue, yellow, orange. All these are different kind of filters which we can use for creating the strokes. Next in the list is blemish tool. We can click right over here. As you can see, the shortcut for blemish is Shift B. So what this tool does, it's very basic. For example, if you have a shot with lots of face blemishes and you want to fix that, take the blemish and paint over there. Basically, you can do makeup fix with this tool. It can be very handy in some situations, but personally, I hardly use this. We can see the properties right over here. But before that, let's see what this tool does. I'm going to zoom right over here. In the screen, you can see a circle. This is called our brush. We will use this brush to paint our strokes in our shots. Here you can see the properties for altering the properties of this brush. I'm not going to explain this in this video, maybe in a later episode for sure. But you can press Ctrl in your keyboard to increase the size of the brush. blemish. You can adjust it here as well. I'm going to keep this as default, which is 10 pixels. So I'm making sure the brush selected is blemish, and let's click on this black spot. As soon as I clicked, you can see black spot is gone, and also there is kind of grain effect on top of that. You can alter the properties right over here. You can adjust the blur, and also there is an option to adjust for the amount of smudging you need, and also for the softness. There is an option for monochrome as well. Next in the list is blur, and the shortcut for that is Ctrl B. We can use this brush for blurring specific areas. You can understand that from the name itself. Making sure the brush selected is blur, and I'm going to blur this area. You can see it's just blur, and it doesn't have many options as properties, just radius. We can decrease the value and also increase the value. Let's decrease the value, maybe 2. Just draw right over here. It's less blurry right now. That means by controlling the radius, we are not adjusting the size of the brush. Instead, we are controlling the size of the blur. Next one in the list is detail brush. Clicking on that, and the shortcut for that is Alt D. Learning shortcut in Silhouette is going to be super handy while you work. Keep that in mind. Coming back to the lesson. So I'm going to zoom in this specific area to see what detail brush does. Let's draw a stroke. This is just like enhancing the image. Basically what it does is it kind of sharpens the image, or in some cases it smoothens the image as well. You all might be aware of the frequency separation technique inside Nuke, which we will use for makeup fix or separating detail while you paint. This is somewhat similar to that, just to enhance the detail a bit while you paint. And regarding the properties, we have coarse, medium, fine for adjusting different levels of sharpening, and also we have gang, which we can make use for combining all these 3 options. And also we have range, where we can control specific areas, that means shadows, midtones, highlights separately or as a full image as well. Also we have a reset all button right over here. Next one is clone tool, and the shortcut for that is C. I'm 100% sure that like after the training, the most used brush will be clone tool. We have to learn clone tool in a very detailed way. Also you can see the properties is much more complex than the other brushes, so I'll be explaining clone tool in a different episode. So right now we are going to skip this. Next one is color brush. The shortcut for that is Shift C. This is just like a basic brush where we can select a specific color and draw that color as a stroke. We can select the color by different methods. We can select that from these properties, and some other methods are there which I'm going to explain pretty soon. So we have different color models here separated by different tabs. We have color tab and a tab for hue, saturation and value also. Here we have sliders for selecting a color with specific values. For example, if you have a number specific color, you can type in that here. Also we have a slider for setting the alpha for the stroke, and we have separate pots for easy color selection. That means we can just select the red color from here. This is the selected color which we are going to paint out here. Also we have different modes. All these things you can explore pretty much yourself, but there's an important thing to note here. If you are working on some footage and you need a specific color, it's very hard to select that color from this color diagram or this color wheel or any properties which we have here. So for that there are some shortcuts in Silhouette. For example, if I need to select this color, I can hold my brush over here and click on period key in the keyboard. You can see the color has been selected. So for example, if I'm keeping the brush over here and selecting the period key on the keyboard, you can see the color changed here. There is one more method, placing your pixel right over here and right click on your mouse, select that specific color. And also there is one more option. You can simply right click and select a specific area. This selection just averages out and comes with a resulted color that you can see over here. Welcome back to yet another episode of Silhouette Paint Masterclass, and in today's video we are just going to continue exploring the tools inside Paint, and in this episode we will start with the color correct tool. The shortcut for that is Alt C. So this tool is pretty simple. We can color correct the image and use that color correction for painting. By default we can't do anything, so if we are painting a stroke here, you can see we already have a stroke, but there is no change in the screen or in the viewer. If we see the properties, we have controlling sliders for hue, saturation, brightness, contrast, center, gamma and individual color channels, red, green, blue separately. I'm just going to increase the saturation to 100 and let's draw a stroke. Now you can see we have manipulated the image. That means we have increased the saturation. We are using that as the source of our paintbrush. We can adjust anything, like we can use this brightness. You can see the gamma has been altered, we are painting the strokes with that adjustment. So we have like lots of controls over here. You can go through all the individual controls, like what they does and how we can make use of that in our work. So pretty much this is all about color correct tool. Okay, so the next one is dodge tool, and the shortcut for that is Alt Shift D. This tool is very simple. That means we don't have lots of properties for this one, just exposure control and a pull down menu for range, and finally there is a button for reset. The next one is burn tool, which is the opposite of dodge, and the shortcut for that is Alt Shift B. Alt Shift D is dodge and Alt Shift B is burn tool. That means this darkens the image. Apologies, I didn't show how dodge tool looks in the view. You can see the image is slightly bright. If we increase the exposure control, you can see it's slightly brighter, right? So but if you select the burn tool, you can see this can be used to burn or darken the image. It's entirely opposite. Controls for that is pretty much similar to the dodge tool. That means we have an exposure control and we have the range pull down menu. Pretty much this is all about dodge and burn tool. Let's move into the next one. Okay, so next tool is cutout tool, and the shortcut for that is Alt Shift C. This is just like the marquee tool inside Photoshop. So if you want this specific area to copy from here and paste it over here using clone tool, you can simply clone that. Instead of that, if we have a cutout tool, we can simply draw a rectangular region using the mouse and just leave the mouse. There we go, we have a paint stroke with the selected region. So that means we can select an area and use that as a paint stroke. If I want that stroke to be painted over here, I can simply click over here and we have the same kind of reference from the screen left to the screen right. That means the area where I'm going to work, and on top of this you can use the other traditional tools and work on that. And if you see the properties, we have scale and rotate. That means once you have the selection, you can simply scale that, or even you can rotate it and use that as a paint stroke. I believe the shortcut for that is, for scale we have, let me reset this and show you. For scale we have control, and the shortcut for rotation is Control Shift. Or if you are not comfortable of using the shortcut, or if it's glitchy, you can simply use the properties right away. So yeah, that's all about the cutout tool, and I'm sure you're going to use this tool a lot in your work. Okay, so next one is drag tool, and the shortcut for that is Shift D. Honestly, this is the tool which I use every now and then. Like, even though you are using the clone tool, finally you have to do some touch-ups using drag tool. I always say that blur and drag tool are just like my right and left hand. What drag tool does is pretty much simple. It just matches or smear the pixels. That means smearing, or extending this specific texture over here to this area. So let's suppose I'm going to clone this area. We have lots of texture right over here, so I'm not sure how this is going to be work. I'm going to take drag tool and let's blend this area. I hope you understood what's the use of drag tool in your work. This tool is going to be lifesaver for many of you who are going to be a painter soon using Silhouette. Also, if you check the properties, we have mix and decay. I always notice that when we use drag tool with decay 100%, our strokes will be much more smoother than 90%. So again, I'm not going to keep this 100 like in most cases, but in some extreme cases this can be kept as 100, or rest of the cases you can keep the properties as default. Welcome back to yet another episode of Silhouette Paint Masterclass. In today's episode, we are just going to continue exploring different tools inside Paint interface. In the last video, we have explored till drag tool. If you guys missed previous 2 episodes of our tools for prep and paint sessions, please check out that in my channel. So today, first of all, we are going to check out eraser tool, and the shortcut for that is Shift E. Using shortcuts in your work is very important. That is really going to speed up your workflow, so always remember the shortcuts for each tool sets inside this interface. So what basically eraser tool is, just from the name itself we can understand, it erases the paint strokes or previously painted paint strokes. In other words, we can say that this tool reveals back the input or the plate. I mean, whenever you're feeling like, okay, the paint strokes which I just painted is not right, you can just use eraser tool, that means Shift E, and reveal back that, or you can bring up the plate. Let's see some practical examples. First of all, I'm going to take a color tool and select white color here, draw some paint strokes, take eraser tool, and you can just erase that. It's that simple, so explore this tool in your work. Next one in the list is grain tool, and the shortcut for that is G. So when you are painting in a footage, you might have noticed that it becomes smudgy or it becomes blurry. So it's important to add some texture. The easiest way to do that is adding some grain on top of that. So for that, we can use this tool. You can see the properties right over here. We have size, which controls the size of the grain. We have amount, and we have softness. The other interesting thing which you have here is monochrome. If you are adding grain on top of a plate which don't have any chroma value, you can use this option over there. That means you can turn on this option, and maybe I can increase this a little bit. Let's take a blur tool and blur this area. I don't want blur to be that much. So let's keep this value, and I'm going to take grain tool and I'm adding on top of that. You can see now it's not blurred. We have a texture right over the place where we painted. Now you can see the texture is monochrome. That means it doesn't have any chroma value. If you uncheck this option and press Ctrl Z, now you can see the grain pattern as chromatic. So yeah, that's all about grain tool. Okay, so next one is mosaic tool, and the shortcut for that is M. This tool is a prefabricated tool just to create a pixelating effect. That means if you want to create a pixelating effect here, you can take this tool and just draw a stroke. All the pixels are a combination of the color values, which is just below the stroke. If you're drawing right over here, you can see a mix up of both these colors, and we have properties right over here like size. We can control the size of the pixels. That means if you're keeping maybe 15, you can see the size of the pixel is way smaller than the other stroke. Next one in the list is repair tool, and the shortcut for that is R. This is a tool which I hardly used in my work. I posted in the Silhouette forum about this tool and I got a reply from there, and repair tool can be very useful for painting using the last pixel selected, that too in the detail or color mode. I have already selected repair tool and I'm going to draw a stroke right over here. You can see I have started the stroke from here, and the color selected is the one which is almost an average or maybe a pixel right over from here. So if I reduce the size of the brush, you can see the color selected somewhere around here is this one, and I drew a stroke using that color. So instead of keeping normal as color mode, if I'm keeping color, you can see the effect is slightly different. I'm going to show you here so that it will be much more clear for you. You can see the color which I selected from here is this one, and I'm able to draw a stroke or a color only on the color values. So basically we have two layers here, like color layer and detail layer. You can go and check that right over here. Inside the color layer, you can see these all are the colors in the footage. Also, if we keep detail layer, you can see these all are the details in this footage. This is just similar to the frequency separation. So I'm going to keep this in output. Let's keep the mode as detail and let's see what the result looks like. Result is very different than the other one. I'm not sure where you can use this. If you guys are using this tool in some other ways, please comment it down so that everyone can learn. Let's move into the next one. Next we have scatter tool, and the shortcut for that is Shift S. This one just helps us to scatter the pixels. I'm going to draw right over here. No, I'm going to keep the mode as normal here. Maybe delete this stroke. So let's draw a paint stroke over here. If you zoom in, you can see we have some changes here. If you want to see this even more, you can come over to the properties and we have a radius here. Just increase the radius. Let's keep this as 100. Paint here. Now you can see the pixels are scattered in different way. I mean, for sure we can use this brush for creating glass effect. I hope you understood the situation which I'm talking about, and the shortcut for that is Shift S. Next we have stroke tool, and the shortcut for that is S. If you see our viewer, you can't see a brush in our viewer. That means this tool can't be used as a brush. Instead, it can be used as a tool for selecting the paint strokes. I'm going to draw some paint strokes right over here. Like inside the paint history, we can see there are a lot of strokes, and I can select a stroke right over here, and you can see stroke is selected in the viewer as well. But if you want to select this stroke, we can't easily find that inside the history, or else we need to click every stroke and see which one is that. Instead, we can take the stroke tool or stroke selection tool. Right now we can see all the strokes in the viewer got selected, and if you want to select this specific stroke, you can just click on that. And if you want to select multiple strokes, you can hold Shift and click on all the strokes which you need to select. By mistake, if you selected two strokes, and if you want to deselect one, if you hold Control in your keyboard and select, that got deselected and our needed stroke got selected as well. So, and I hope I explained all the tools inside the paint interface, and you all should have a clear view of where you can use these tools in your work. I accidentally left one tool, which is clone tool. It is an amazing brush which can be used in many ways, and it is one of the important tool as well. So I'm going to make a specific tutorial for that very soon. Stay tuned for that. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions about any of the tools which I explained in these 3 sessions, please comment it down. Hey everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Silhouette Paint Masterclass. In today's episode, we are going to see clone tool specifically because this is really an important tool inside Paint node and can be used in various ways to achieve the desired results. So let's see how the tool works and what all of the properties are. Here, if you see, this is clone tool and the shortcut for that is C. Okay, so basically what clone tool does is we can sample pixels from different parts of an image and use that to paint, or even we can use different plates as well. I'm going to explain that later in this video. So if you hold shift in keyboard and drag, you can see we have 2 brushes now. We have one with green and the other with red. Red is the source and green is the target. So here I sample pixels in the area where my red brush is, and I'm going to paint that sample pixel into the green colored brush here. There we go. So we have sample pixels over the red brush area and painted that into the green zone. Basically that is clone, and I know most of you already know what clone is because you all might have used Photoshop, and in Photoshop there is clone tool. So this is mostly similar to that but different set of properties. Okay, so I'm going to explain some of the shortcuts which you're going to use like every now and then for adjusting the brush. You can just hold shift in your keyboard and offset the clone brush to sample pixel from a different source or different areas of an image and use that to paint in your target area. And also you can hold control in your keyboard to scale the brush, but I'm going to make a specific video for brush settings later, so we'll explain all these things in that video. So yeah, shift for offset and control for scaling the brush. And if you want to reset this brush, you can simply hold shift and just click. That's it. It's a bit buggy I feel, but it should work in your latest version. So also we can use different plates or different images for cloning. So here I'm not going to import a different image. You can do that. I'm just going to import checkerboard. Let's see how I can connect that and paint using this checkerboard, which is obviously we can consider as a different image. So if you zoom over here in the paint node, we can see there's a green tab here, and also we have some other tabs which we can see. This is source 1, source 2, source 3 and 4 and 5, and also we have a data pipe here, like which we can make use for connecting transform data. I already made tons of videos related to that, so and I'm sure you already know that. I'm going to connect the red tab or pipe or whatever it is to the checkerboard. Right now you cannot see any changes over here, but if you go into this pull down menu and if you select source 1 here, you can see we have checkerboard in the viewer right now. That means this is source 1 pipe and I have connected that into the checkerboard, and we have checkerboard as a source inside our paint node. So now how I can make use of checkerboard in my work, let's go back to output. So inside clone tool we have 3 separate tabs. That means one for clone with all the properties related to cloning. Also we have a tab specifically for grading or filtering. That means we have properties for color correction, and also we have properties for filtering. That means blur and sharpening. And also we have a tab for warp, which will be explained in this video but not in that detail. So inside the properties we can see there is a pull down menu for source, and we can see there is source 1 now. So I'm going to disconnect this pipe. Let's see. So now we can see there is only output and input. So as soon as I connect the source 1 pipe into the checkerboard, you can see we have source 1. And if I select source 1, you cannot see any difference here. For accessing checkerboard in our viewer, we can use some shortcuts. I mainly use Q for that. Now we have checkerboard, and also we can see the plate behind that. You can use this mix properties to avoid that transparency. I always keeps that in 100. Oops, sorry, 100. And now we can see we have checkerboard inside our viewer, and how we can clone that. It's going to be very easy. That's it. So yeah, before that I'm going to explain some of the properties as well. So here we have source window. We can connect like multiple sources here, like for example I'm going to connect maybe color bar here, and I'm going to connect another pipe into that. And inside our properties we have source 2 now, and if you press Q in the keyboard we have that in the viewer as well. Yeah, it's pretty simple to connect multiple plates or multiple inputs for your paint. Next to this pull down menu we have a small button for mask. Let's suppose I have an alpha here. I'm going to take roto node and copy and I'm going to connect this pipe into my roto. Let's draw a roto here. Inside the copy we can keep the alpha as alpha. Let's see. Yep, you can see the alpha is coming from the roto, and we have checkerboard as our RGB. Now if I am connecting this pipe into this copy node, we have RGBA. If you go into the paint properties and select source one as the source for your paint, and if you turn on this mask button, now if I am painting, I'm just using the alpha value inside the plate which you are using as a mask for our paint work. If you have a roto mask for a specific character and you're painting on that character, you can use that roto mask here. Just paint to avoid edge confusion. Yeah, that's all about mask. And we have frame offset here. That means if you have n number of frames in your plate, you can choose a specific frame in your reference plate and use that as a source for your paint work. And up next we have relative. So what basically relative does is that we can change your current frame and the reference frame will automatically change relative to the current frame. Let's suppose if you are painting using the source image 70 and you're painting on frame number 1, and if you're moving to frame number 2, and you can see the reference frame is already 71, so you don't have to adjust that manually. But if you want to keep this as a static frame, you can uncheck this and use that. So if I'm going to whatever frames in my work, the frame which I'm using from source 1 still stays at 71, so that's going to be useful in some cases. We have source match move button here, which I'm going to explain later when we learn advanced stuff. Now we have offset controls here. Another way, translate controls. We have scale, top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, and also we have a slider for rotation as well. So now we have checkerboard on top of our plate, so you can adjust the value and see what offset does. This is as simple as X and Y translate. Scale, as you can see, this is scale option. You can turn off the scale and scale it on individual axis. Rotation is simply rotating the source. Now we have top left. That means we can adjust the top left corner of this plate. We have XY controls for that specific corner. Similar to that, we have controls for top right as well. Yep, so that's all about the transform controls, and let's move into the filtering. We have a pull down menu for filtering. I always use catmull rom. I mean, there are cases where we can change this. Just explore that. Up next we have subpixel, which is kind of an important property when you are painting like subpixel transformations. You can turn on this subpixel properties to match the reference along with your input. Usually if you turn on subpixel, your paint strokes are going to be a bit blurred, so I usually avoid subpixel painting. Now let's see some shortcuts for the transformation. Yep, so I just forgot to mention that we can use QWE as shortcuts for transformation. That means Q for translate. So as soon as you press Q in the keyboard, you can see we have source one, and we can nudge that using arrow keys. And also we have rotation controls. That means we can press W, just use the arrow key for rotation as well. You might have noticed that wherever I'm pressing W, you can see my pivot is set right over there, and I can translate, rotate or scale using that pivot point, which is very important. Also we can use E as a shortcut for scale. You can see the values are changed in the properties as well. And yeah, learning shortcuts for this is definitely going to speed up your workflow. I'm going to reset this. I'm going to zoom here. If I press arrow key once, you can see it just translated by 1 pixel. If I hold shift and press the arrow key once, you can see here we translated 10 pixels. Let's do a reset here. If I hold control in my keyboard and press the arrow key, you can see that's like 1/10 of a pixel. This is like a subpixel variation, so that means like 1/10 of a pixel. I mean, there are various situations where you have to use control and shift, and sometimes without control and shift as well. So these all are the shortcuts for nudging. You might be asking, is there a shortcut for transforming specific corners of this reference plate? Yes, there is shortcut for that as well. So if you want to control top left corner, that means you can press Ctrl 1 in your keyboard. It will activate the transformation for top left corner, and you can hold shift or control, or even you can use arrow keys. So I'm going to hold shift here and show you the difference. As soon as you finish your edit, you can press Ctrl 1 to come out of that. If you want to control top right, you can press Ctrl 2. You can edit here using this. You can press Ctrl 3 for bottom right. That means I can Ctrl 4 bottom left. Now you can see I simply match the using shortcuts alone. Now let's see what are these buttons. We have interactive and region. Now let's suppose you are a person who loves to transform this manually using a control in the viewer. You can do that as well. So right over here we have interactive button. You can see the onion skin is already activated. That means our checkerboard is in the viewer, and we have lots of controls right over here. We can adjust similar to the transformations which we just saw. Use these 4 corners here. This is just like manually doing it instead of shortcuts, or instead of adjusting the sliders. We have skew control here, and also we have rotation controls right over here, and also we have scale option as well. If you want to do this whole thing with a specific area as my pivot, I can do that as well using this region button. I'm just going to select region and just draw a box right over here. We have some controls for this box. That means we can adjust each corners. Also we can place it somewhere else by just dragging the box. Just click on outside and it just resets this. Select an area right over here, maybe set my pivot right over there, and I can adjust that. It's all customizable, and you have lots of controls in these properties. I forgot to mention that we have different types of onion skin overlays here. Okay, so this is just enabling onion skin overlay. To be honest, I always use this one. I rarely used this one, but if you guys are comfortable using this in your work, please go ahead. So this is just aligning it using a difference mode, and we have like vertical, I believe. Yep, vertical split. You can simply wipe your reference plate on top of your input, and we can use horizontal split. That means you can use this wipe horizontally using this button. Yeah, that's all about clone properties, and let's move into the next tab. That means we have grade filter here. This can be used completely for color corrections. That means like if there is a noticeable difference in color between your input and reference plate, you can use all these properties for adjusting the color for your reference plate, not your plate. Auto grade, perfect for lots of situations, but yeah, basically it does adjust the color automatically as the name suggests, but I hardly got convinced results using these options. And if I turn off this, we have properties for gain, gamma, lift, hue, and saturation as well. We have individual controls for individual channels. Just turn off this lock. You can adjust individually. Yeah, this is all pretty much standard stuff. And also we have filtering for blur and sharpening. If your input is bit blurred and your reference is pretty sharp, you can blur that. You can see that right over here. Along with that, even you can sharpen as well. Totally adjustable, totally editable, super useful in your work. Also we have reset button here to reset all the adjustments which you just did. Just reset that and it's set to default. Okay, so here I'm using color bars instead of checkerboard for showing you how warp works. It's very simple. We can add pins in your screen or in your viewer and edit your reference plate with that pin. I'm going to click here, add a pin, and just drag. Yeah, you can see your plate is getting, or your reference plate is getting warped. We can add a max of 20 pins, I believe. I remember reading that in the user guide. You can adjust the pin and tags separately. Also, you can adjust the radius holding shift in the keyboard and just dragging. So this is all about warping the reference plate using the warp tab. And also we have an option for transforming using a point track. So yeah, that's all about a pin tab. You can press reset all to delete all the pins. And one more thing I forgot to mention is that as soon as you do some editing inside the warp tab and grade filter tab, you can see there is a green circle right over here. And if you adjust this a bit, you can see right now we have a green indicator for grade filter as well. The reason why we have these indicators is that it will be always inside the clone properties, and it's easy for us to recognize that there is some adjustment already did inside grade and warp tabs. So this is all about clone tool properties, and yeah, we have few more options. Finally, I'm going to explain you about how dual clone brush works. So right over here we can see 1, 2 dual. We can have two different reference plates with two different transform, color, as well as warp properties, and mix those two different reference plates for cloning into our input plate. It can be quite complicated for you to understand how this works, but I'm going to show you a perfect easy example to make you understand it further. So making sure clone brush 1 is selected, and I have color bar as my reference plate for that. I have adjusted few properties right over here. Maybe it's like randomly adjusting, not any purpose here, and also some color operations as well. And also I'm taking a checkerboard as a different reference plate and adding that as source 2. Okay, now I'm going to select brush number 2. The shortcut for that is Shift Alt 2 and this is Shift Alt 1. As soon as I select, you can see I have the checkerboard because I have selected source 2 for that, and I have adjusted this a little bit. Maybe a little bit bluish. Now if I view 1, you can see we have a different reference plate with a different set of properties. It's another reference plate with another set of properties. Now if I turn off my clone and if I click on dual, we have a mixed properties here. I'm going to keep this as 50. Now in the viewer we have 2 source brushes and 1 target. Paint right over here. We can see this is a mix up of color bar and checkerboard. I can adjust this even further using this mix node. Yeah, so that's all about the dual clone brush, and I hope this tutorial is super useful to every one of you because I made a lot of effort to record this and edit it. So I believe it serves the value. If you guys have more questions about any of these brushes, please comment it down. In the next class, I will end this module by explaining some of the brush properties as well. So see you in the next episode. Welcome back to yet another episode of Silhouette Paint Masterclass. In today's episode, we are going to check out some of the pending brush settings. We have presets tab here, we have profile tab and some other settings as well. As you can see here in my screen, this is a different plate compared to the last few tutorials. So if you go into the properties of paint node, I have made few tutorials which explains all these brushes in a very detailed way. If you guys missed those videos, please check out my channel. It's going to be very informative. So let's see what all we have inside profile settings. So I'm going to select color brush and the shortcut for that is Shift C. So here we have the brush in my viewer. Inside the profile tab, we can see there is a small window here which shows the exact brush we have in the viewer. Size is just the size of the brush. If I increase the size in the viewer itself, we can see the brush is larger than the previous value. So opacity is controlling the opacity of the brush. That means if I'm keeping it as 100 and painting, you can see this is very opaque. If I am reducing the opacity, that means I'm reducing the transparency. And you can see the transparency right over here. Keep in mind that this is going to be very useful when you paint. Softness controls the softness of the brush. If you increase the softness, it's like a very soft matte, and if you are decreasing the value like 2.5, the edge is very hard. And the next one is fall off. It just controls the feather value. You can see the difference right over here. And I'm going to keep this as a default. You can explore that when you work. Up next we have flatness, and this property can be used to determine the flatness of the brush. If I'm going to increase the value, you can see my brush is very flat now. I can keep this as 98 and we have a sharp line kind of stroke here. Maybe some cases it's going to be super useful, or else you can keep this as 0. We can tweak the angle as well. So suppose I want something like this, and you can see we can tweak the angle up to 360 degree, and we have spacing. Spacing determines the spacing of the brush stroke. You can definitely explore all these properties while you work or while you practice. And as I just mentioned, we have a small window here which shows the look of the brush when we tweak these properties. We have 2 different brushes here, like circle brush and square brush. So square is just square. So I'm going to keep this back to circle. Maybe I'm going to keep this all as default. Maybe increase the size a bit so that I can show you what airbrush does. So if I right click on my mouse and just hold, I cannot see any difference unless I move the mouse a bit. But if I turn on this airbrush or check this airbrush button, see if I right click and hold the stroke, you can see the difference. The stroke just fills out gradually inside the brush window. So this is all about airbrush. I'm not sure where we can use this, but you can be aware of the settings for sure. Up next we have another option, build up. So I'm not sure what this does properly. You can definitely refer the user guide for knowing what is this, or if you're already using this tool, please let me know in the comments so that I can learn too. So this is all about profile settings, and here we have controls for different channels. That means we can paint in different channels as well. Right now we are painting inside red, green, blue channel simultaneously. Let's suppose if I want to paint inside the R channel, I can select R. Let's draw here. If I go into the green channel, you can see there is no stroke painted here, in the blue channel as well. But if you check the red channel, you can see there is a stroke. So we just painted in the red channel alone. And also we have alpha tab. So if you want to paint in the RGB channels as well as the alpha channel, you can turn on RGB as well as alpha. You cannot turn on RGB or alpha. It's just like any of these individual channels or collective of all this channel like RGB and alpha. So I'm going to turn this off. So here we have 3 buttons: normal, color, details, and there is a slider which controls the value of these options. and there is another option here as well. So I'm going to explain what is this. So if you go into the color layer, you can see here we are just seeing the color values in this plate, and if we go into the detail layer, you can see this is the detail layer. We can see the strokes as well. So basically what is this? This option is very similar to frequency separation painting technique inside Nuke. That means we can paint inside the color layer, or we can paint inside the detail layer separately. You don't have to take multiple nodes for doing that. So going back to the output node, and let's turn on the color button and take clone tool, reduce the brush size. Let's paint right over here. So here you can see I'm just painting in the color layer. Still I can see the details of the tree here. That means my paint strokes are affecting only the color layer. So if I'm keeping detail and now if I'm painting, let's see, it just affects the detail. That means all the color values are still unchanged here, only the details are being cloned here. Yeah, this is going to be very useful, and this is the level of detail or color which we want to use for cloning. And there is another option here like coarse, medium, fine. You can refer the official reference guide to see the difference between all these three options. We have obey alpha and invert alpha. Let's go into the rotor node. I'm going to create a circle here, and if you check the alpha, you can see there's an alpha here. So inside the paint tab. Okay, so before doing anything, I'm just going to delete this stroke. You can select the stroke and delete that here, or even you can use this option. So this option is just for deleting the paint strokes completely on the current frame, a particular work range, or all frames. So I'm going to delete the paint strokes in the current frame. Delete, everything is gone. Our paint history is blank. If you see here, we have an alpha which is coming directly from the rotor node. How this alpha is coming into the paint node? Because I have connected the rotor node into the paint node, that's why it is. So let's see what is show shapes. If I turn on this checkbox, you can see the same shape from the rotor node. And let's turn on this obey alpha option. Now if I paint over my plate, you can see my paint stroke is getting affected only inside the alpha which is derived from the rotor node. So if you have an alpha for an object or a character from the rotor department, you can use that as a mask for painting. It's that simple. So Control Z, and if I turn on invert alpha and I'm painting, now my paint strokes are getting affected just outside the area where my alpha is. Here I have alpha source. There is a pull down menu for that. Let's suppose I have another rotor node here, and I'm going to connect into the source pipe. So inside this rotor node, I'm going to draw a square, and I'm going to connect this into the plate as well. So here I have a different alpha, and inside paint node here in the alpha source, if I am choosing source 1 as my alpha, and now I am painting, you can see my alpha is changed. Like that I can connect 5 different pipes or 5 different sources for alpha masking and painting. This is all about alpha source, and there is paint source. I think this is a recent update, so I haven't got time to see what this does. If you guys are already using it, please comment it down. I'll be happy to learn from you guys. Finally, we have an option for transform, which is going to be a super handy tool for your work. And yeah, this is all about this tab. And if we see here, we have a button right over here that takes us directly into the paint preference. Just for your information, up here we have a different tab, auto paint, and inside that we have paint history. That means whatever strokes we are drawing over the footage, we can see the history of those strokes inside this, and we can utilize this history of options for many different kind of tasks or many different kind of techniques. So finally we have paint parameters. This is basically useful while you output the paint strokes. I'm going to delete the current frame. Let's draw 2 strokes here. So inside the output node, if I'm going to see the alpha, I'm going to disconnect it right now because I just want to show you what that does. So let's suppose if I'm connecting the output tab into paint only, double click on output node, you can see in the viewer I have only the area where my paint strokes are. If I see there's an alpha as well, my alpha is like very solid, very hard, edgy. If I don't want my alpha to be this hard, or if I want my alpha just similar to my strokes, you can go back to the paint parameters and keep this as soft and just go into the output node. Now you can see the alpha as soft as your paint strokes. Now I have explained pretty much all the stuff, but I left one important stuff. So what presets does is we can select different brushes and tweak the setting and save that brush settings as a preset which we can use in a different shot or at a different time. So how to do that? let's save different presets for different colors and different opacities and different sizes as well. So first of all, I'm just going to delete this current frame to avoid any confusions. Here I have selected my color tool, and let's select the red color, and let's keep the opacity as 100 and maybe size as 300, and pretty much all other stuff are same. First of all, I'm going to draw a stroke here. You can see this is red color and the opacity is 100 as well. So I'm going to save this as a preset. Maybe I can rename by double clicking color red. At the bottom of this tab, you can see there is a plus icon. I'm going to click that. It just creates preset number 2. Now I'm going to select green. Let's keep the opacity as 60 and size as maybe 250 or 200. I'm going to draw a stroke here, green, and let's create another preset. Let's select this blue color and opacity maybe 20, size maybe 93. Blue color, you can see opacity is less here. Name this as color blue. Okay, so we have 3 presets now. If I use shortcut Alt 1 to 3 or Alt 0 to 9, Alt 1, Alt 2, Alt 3, you can see the properties are changing as I am selecting different presets. Alt 1 red 300, red color. Alt 2 green 260. I'm going to select drag. Let's create a preset for that. Drag maybe with value of 50. Let's rename this as drag 01. Again, preset number 2. Let's keep this as 100. Now if I select Alt 5, you can see we have different settings for the drag tool, which we can definitely make use to ease our work. So this is all about presets tab. And also now if I want to prioritize my drag brushes, that means if I want to position drag 1 on top of this presets tab, I can do that as well. We can drag this to the top. Instead I can select the brush and just use this icon. You can see now if I select Alt 1, Alt 1 is my drag brush, which has a decay value of 50, and Alt 5 is the same drag brush with a decay value of 100. We can lock the parameters as well. Also, there is an option for importing presets and exporting presets, and there is an option for clear presets as well. So if you made specific presets for a specific project or a specific kind of work, you can export that to a colleague or your friend. I hope this is going to be super useful in your work. In the next tutorial, we will learn some of the advanced stuff like creating a clean plate, how to do that, what all are the tools which we will make use for painting a clean plate. Lots of things to learn. So I hope to see you in the next tutorial, and as always, I hope this tutorial is super useful to you. Thank you. Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another session of Silhouette Paint Masterclass, and in today's session we are going to create clean plates. This is going to be the most vital skill you need as a paint artist, so consider this as a basic class which will eventually make you a skillful paint artist. So let's begin. Okay, so in this shot I have a man jumping from top of a cliff into the beach. My task will be to remove this character. If I see the shot, I feels like it's kind of easy to remove this character because there is not that much texture behind this character, and there is like simple color, that means color of an evening sky. But when we start painting, it will get little more complicated because you can see there is a gradient between orange and blue here, and also we need to recreate this flare. You can see there is also bokeh of the lens flare. Lots of things to recreate here, so it's not that easy. If you don't believe that, I can show you here. Let's suppose if I'm going to take clone tool to clone these color pixels where this character is, so I'm going to do that. Let's take the clone tool. I am going to hold shift in my keyboard. Let's paint and see how this looks like. So why this is happening? Because the source which we are using for painting is input. So if I keep this to output, now if I'm painting, you can see we don't have any issues while we paint. So this is obviously not a good clean plate, and we can see a lot of color mismatches, lots of paint artifacts here. So this is definitely not going to work out, and if we are giving this as a clean plate to a compositor or a prep artist, they are not going to accept this. So the first misconception is that it's very easy to create a clean plate. That's not true, because there are color variations, gradient textures, lots and lots of difficulties. You need to figure it out while you do clean plates. The best way to do that is which tools and where to use that. So I have some recommendations here for this particular shot. It may vary from shot to shot. Delete this paint strokes. The easiest way to do that is come to the settings, and inside this delete pull down menu, current frame, delete. That's it. So I just showed you how clone tool works in this shot, but if you zoom in here and use clean plate very mildly, but you can find there is color difference here. So I'm not that happy to use clone tool in this area. In this case, I'm going to try one more tool, that will be color tool. Zoom into the area where I'm going to paint, right click, pick that color and just try to paint. As you can see here, we have a better result, although we can see some kind of artifacts here. I'm going to fix that later with few other tools, so keep on watching. So here basically I have painted out all the edges. Now we can increase the scale of the brush, pick up the color and just paint. Once almost you feels like the character is somewhat painted out, you can just fill with some color relating to the surrounding colors. So as you can see, I have painted out this character, but you can see there are lots of artifacts here. So my next step will be to smooth out or to blend these color artifacts. The tool set which I'm going to use for that is my favorite and the most needed tool for every paint artist according to me, track tool. Make sure all the settings are needed as per your task. Okay, so this looks a bit decent to me. So once I feel that my character is completely gone or painted out, the next step will be to fine tune that specific area where you painted out. So my personal choice for this section of work will be blur tool. So I'm going to take blur tool and the shortcut for that is B. We have the blur radius as 15. Let's increase the size of the brush and paint. Now if you could see, we have successfully painted out the character, but as you can see there is a dark halo edge here which should have been painted out if I did this even precisely. And my next step will be recreating those lens flares. Here I can see there's a lens flare which I smudged here, so maybe color tool for that. And pick up this color. If you see the edges of this bouquet, you can see it is kind of a straight line. We can hold Alt in keyboard and just draw a stroke. That helps us to create straight lines. To take my color tool and pick up a color here. So moving on to the final step. As you can see, I have painted out this character, but in many cases there will be areas where we don't want to touch. We just need to reveal back all those details. So here you can see we have painted over this section of lens flare where we shouldn't have touched. So I'm going to take eraser tool for that, just erase those edges. Here we have a bit of color mismatch, so I'm going to take maybe blur tool for this area and maybe 5, and also make sure to reveal back all those unwanted areas where you painted out. So yeah, we have successfully painted out that character, recreated this lens flare, made sure the gradient of the sky is matching as much as possible. Apologies for leaving this area with a black halo kind of color artifact. I did this clean plate in Rush for this specific tutorial, so I'm not going to take time to fine tune all those minute color fixes. If you're working in a production, make sure you're fixing all those color artifacts or color mismatches, and make sure your clean plate is worth your time, worth your skill set. Yeah, I believe this tutorial is going to be helpful in some or other way. Please make sure to like this tutorial and share this with your colleagues, and yeah, I will meet you in my next tutorial. Thank you. Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Silhouette Paint Masterclass. In today's episode, we are going to see some advanced techniques or skills for creating a clean plate. And in my previous episode, I have taught you about basics of creating clean plate and what all brushes we can use. Specifically in that tutorial, I was using a single image or a random image from internet, but in most of the cases you will receive a sequence of image, and from that plate you have to choose a sharp, crisp frame where you can create a clean plate. So in this case, I have a footage here. I'm going to do a playback and show you how my footage looks like. Yep, so here I have the footage, and my task will be to remove this character. For that, what I have to do is create a clean plate over this area where I have to recreate this texture. I believe this is concrete, or basically I have to recreate the floor. The best way or the easiest way to do that, if you are a beginner, you might do this mistake, but I have to remove this character. So the best way to do that is like this area and this area is similar with texture but not with lighting. So what I'm going to do is simply use a clone brush and clone this area from here. I'm going to reset this, hold shift in the keyboard, and I have selected a source and destination. So I'm cloning here, and as you can see, I'm able to recreate this floor. I will match the clone brush a bit more accurately, matching the line perfectly. Oops, I have to reset the source frame as well. So I'm going to reset this, and now I have to use the clone brush, and I'm matching this line accurately. You can see the lighting is not matching that great, so maybe I will use auto grade and see how this looks like. slightly better, but not that great. Maybe I can decrease the value a bit, and yeah, obviously I'm not going to spend a lot of time recreating this stuff for this tutorial, so let's consider this as our clean plate. I know it's not that accurate, but now I'm happy with the clean plate because I just painted out that character. Now my next step would be to do prep on this shot. So if I do a playback and see, I already have the source here, and you can see there are some white marks here, and in my clean plate there are no white marks. So if I do prep with this clean plate, it's going to get messy and I won't be able to match this shot perfectly. The best way to do that, and the reason for this tutorial, is we can utilize source from different frames in the same footage and recreate the clean plate. First of all, I'm just going to delete the current frame. I'm going to reset this. If you do playback here, you can see we have 320 as my source frame. Come back to the frame where you have to create the clean plate and make sure you have the perfect brush settings. So we have a couple of options here. I already explained all these things in my previous video where I explained what clone tool brush does. Consider checking out that in my channel. I'm going to choose output as my source here, as I'm using the same source or same plate, or if I have like a clean plate which is provided from the client. For recreating this area, I can use that, but in my case there is no other plate, so I'm going to use output as the source here. And here we have frames, and here we can choose the frame, exact frame where you are going to use for recreating that clean plate frame. In my case it was 320, so I'm going to type in 320 here. Now if you press Q in my keyboard, it will turn on the onion skin overlay and you can see the source frame. We can utilize this area from frame 320 into frame 384. The way to do that is use transformation shortcuts. Again, I have explained every kind of transformation methods and shortcuts in the other video, so yeah, just go and check out that video after watching this. Yeah, I'm going to use shortcuts, Q for translate and W for rotate and E for scale, and also we can use arrows in the keyboard for navigations. Here I'm going to match this frame perfectly. You can use shift and control as well for minimizing and maximizing the transformations. Kind of matched here, and the next step would be making sure you are in the exact frame where you want to create the clean plate is. In my case it is 384. I don't have to adjust anything here, but make sure I'm using clone brush as my brush and just paint over the area where you have to create the clean plate. Wait, before that I can just come over to grade filter and see if I'm able to auto grade the area where I'm painting. It's super messy, so it's better to turn off that. And yeah, obviously you can use this grade properties for adjusting the lighting in different areas. I guess this area is darker because of the shadow of the character. 1.15, and now if I paint just over here, even better now, 0.9 or something, and now it's matching a little bit more, revealing back the unwanted areas. I'm just going to reset this. Again, come back to the clone tab, and maybe I can use 300th frame, and let's see how the result looks like. Now you can see we have matched the clean plate with the source, and if you're doing prep with this clean plate, it's going to be super clean. You can match the texture of the floor very accurately. Also, you can see I have missed out some area because it was kind of dark and I was not able to create like a solid texture there. So if that's the case, you can recreate here using clone brush manually, and maybe I can reset everything. And this is not wrong because you don't have source for this area in any other frames, or you don't have any other reference plate from the client. It's perfectly okay to randomly clone a specific area where you don't have any source, just like this as an example. So consider this as a next step for your learning curve. And for sure, creating clean plate is not that easy. From a first look, this shot was looking very easy to do, but as we work, we can see lots of complications. There were like texture mismatches and lighting differences, all sort of things. So basically, just work on different shots with different complications and acquire perfect skills for creating clean plates. As a paint prep artist, this is really vital. So consider spending more time on creating clean plates. I believe this tutorial is super useful, or you have learned something from this. If yes, please give a like to the video and comment down your thoughts. If you have any questions, you can comment down that as well. See you in the next episode. Thank you for watching. Hi everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Silhouette Paint Masterclass. In today's episode, we are going to explore what auto paint is And in my workspace you can see there is a window here called auto paint. If you are not able to find this, you can just go into window and just click once to make it visible. What auto paint does is pretty simple. So this is an amazing automated tool which records every single paint strokes which you draw or every single events which happen inside this session. And the beauty of this thing is that you can utilize this history to manipulate or to rebuild other work frames. And yeah, this is going to be a game changer in your workflow. So first of all, we have paint history here. As the name suggests, this is just the history of all the paint strokes which we did. So let's suppose I am taking a color tool and I'm going to write my name. This is my first stroke, second stroke, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, seventh. Totally we have 7 strokes here, including this dot. And if you see the paint history tab, you can see we have a timestamp here where, like, when we created these strokes included in this group, we can expand this group by clicking here. So, and inside there we have like a total of 7 strokes. If you select these strokes, you can see there are 7 strokes here, and also all the strokes are drawn using color brush. So now if I'm taking another brush, let's take blur tool, draw a stroke here. So you can see now we have a blur stroke inside the same group. So if you want to create a new group, you can simply click on this plus icon here, add group. A new group has been created. Now if I'm drawing a new stroke, you can see all the strokes are inside the new group. Here we don't have to create these groups manually. Most of the times it will be automatically created. Let's suppose if I'm doing some paint work here and I'm just going to the next frame and coming back to the same frame. And now if I am drawing a new frame, now this is a new group and it is automatically created. You don't have to worry creating a new group manually. Software does that for you. Yeah, this is all about the paint history. And also we have the show strokes icon here. Usually I keep this every time as on. If you turn it off, even though if you're selecting the strokes, you won't be able to see the strokes. And also we have delete option which we can make use to delete individual strokes or all the history of strokes as well. Let's suppose if I don't want this couple of strokes, I can select that and just click on rebuild. That's it. Those 2 strokes are deleted now. So if you want to delete any particular strokes, you can select inside the history and just click on delete and rebuild. Also, I forgot to mention one important thing. So instead of seeing this timestamp as your group name, you can edit that manually or type in anything which you want. I'm going to double click here, paint history 01, paint history 02. Up next we have the playback option which we can utilize for rebuilding our work range. So inside this pull down menu you can see we have current frame, which obviously paint out the current frame, and also we have work range, all frames, that means the whole input frame range. Also we can type in custom work range, that means if you select this you can type in like maybe 10 to 35, and hence we can utilize this history into this specific work range. Also we have current to end. Let's suppose I am in between the work range like 50, and if I just need to paint this from 50 to 100, you don't have to go into custom and type in the specific work range. You can select current to end. That means from your current frame till the last frame, and you can see this is automatically typed here like 50 to 100. And also we have start to current. I'm in my first frame again, and up next we have few options here, few arrows I would say. These all are the play buttons, and also we have match move option, which is pretty amazing. And at last we have replay and rebuild option. Let's suppose if I'm drawing a stroke here with maybe opacity 50 and size 50. So I'm going to draw a color. Okay. So this is my stroke and I want exactly the same stroke in another frame. Let's suppose in frame 58 we need the exact paint strokes with all these bends and curves. So yep, we are in frame 58 and I can't draw the exact frame again. It's not the exact frame, right? So instead of drawing a new stroke, I can simply use replay button. Apologies. The problem is that I drew a new stroke, right? So now we won't be able to draw the exact stroke as frame number 1. Instead we can draw the frame 58. This stroke I'm going to utilize in frame maybe frame 20. Just click on replay and we have the exact same stroke with the same properties in this frame. I haven't came across such a situation where this is so important. In those cases, just remember there is an option for that. Finally, we have a rebuild option. As the name suggests, we can rebuild all the paint strokes or selected frame strokes. I have made a specific tutorial on rebuild a couple of years back, which explains the most important use case of this option. But here I'm going to give you a rough glimpse. We can use this option to rebuild all the paint history in exactly the same order which we drew all the paint strokes. Let's suppose if you worked on a specific footage and for your surprise they have changed the footage or they have color corrected the footage, so the footage looks similar, but as you might have imagined, all our works looks crappy or mismatched now. So in that case you can simply hook up the new plate into the same paint node and just click on rebuild node, and it will automatically rebuild, or I would say replay is the best name for a rebuild option, because it will replay all the paint strokes which we do in order, and this will sort out all the color mismatches on your work. So yeah, this is all about the rebuild. And now let's see how we can utilize all these play buttons and match move option as well. The beauty of auto paint is that we can definitely use tracking data from a roto node or a tracker node and utilize those transform data into our paint workflow. We should always keep this in mind. You have to connect the roto node or tracker node into the paint node using this pipe. You can see this is a data pipe which has objects, transform, surface mesh, cryptomat, and so on and so forth. So if you do that, you can extract all the tracking information into our paint workflow. Click on roto node. Maybe let's suppose I have to remove this arrow from this shot. I can simply draw a square over this and track this area. Click on tracker, mocha tracker. I will turn on perspective as well because this has some sort of perspective, I believe. Yeah, it's not important, but I'm just turning it on this time. Cool, so we have the track here, and so you can simply go into stabilize and click on active layer. Tracking looks very decent to me, so I'm going to move to my next step. So as I mentioned earlier, I made sure my data pipes are connected. Inside my paint node, we have an option here. Before that, if you can see right now my match move option is disabled because we don't have any tracking data inside our paint node. Precisely, we won't be able to access trackers inside a roto node. Instead, we can apply those trackers into a layer, and you can access those track layers from our paint. So here we have option for selecting specific tracks from the roto node. If you click on here, you can see we have layer 1 here, the same layer which we tracked inside the roto node. Select layer 1 here. As soon as this got selected, now we have the match move option highlighted, and we can check here for match moving our strokes. Going back to the frame 1, I'm gonna remove this. Okay, so I have removed that arrow here. Inside my paint history, you can see all those strokes, and you can select the playback option here. Like, I want the strokes to be painted out throughout my work range. I always set my work range before starting a shot, and we have 4 options here, like step selected events backward 1 frame, and this is forward 1 frame. This is playing selected events forward and backward as well. So I'm going to play this forward. So yeah, just click on play button here and just sit and relax, watch the magic. Yep, so there we go. I have painted the entire work range without doing any work. Silhouette did that for me. This is the beauty of using auto paint in your workflow. But let's see how my result looks like. I'm going to play it for you. You can see the result is fabulous, at least for me, and you just paint it out in a single frame and utilize those beautiful tracking data for your work, and yeah, that's done. So this is all about auto paint, and if you guys felt this tutorial as helpful, please hit that like button and share this with your friends who is struggling to do paint work. I'll be posting continuity of this series very soon, so stay tuned, and thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Silhouette Paint Masterclass. As a paint artist, you might have already did hundreds of marker removal shots. In visual effects, we always see there are lots of green screen and blue screen shoots, and in most cases there will be lots of markers interacting with the objects and characters, as well as there will be markers without interacting as well. So we are going to check out a couple of shots here where markers don't have any interactions and vice versa. So in my first shot, it's pretty easy and simple and straightforward shot where we can pretty much use auto paint to remove the markers. By the way, if you didn't check out my last tutorial about auto paint, please go ahead and watch that tutorial before watching this one, because I'm going to use auto paint entirely in today's tutorial. Pause this tutorial here and watch my previous one and come back to this after that. So this is a footage from the Blender library. Let me show you how this footage looks like and then proceed from there. As you can see, there are no complex camera movements here, but I can see there is a slight rack focus animation here. It's not that tough to remove these markers because it don't have any interactions. Let's suppose if I'm going to remove these markers, if you're viewing in the color channel, you won't be able to see the entire marker precisely. For that, you can just go into individual channels. Here I have a red marker, so I will go into the red channel, click over here, or you can simply press Alt R. You can see the marker very clearly here. Yep, so we can do this by a couple of methods here. The first one can be using silhouettes new in paint node, and the second one by using auto paint. So before doing anything, make sure you are degraining the plate. The next step should be taking in paint node. So tab in paint, there we go. I will connect that into my footage. I have made a detailed tutorial about InPaint, so here I'm going to show you a rough glimpse. You can watch that specific tutorial on InPaint for more detailed description. So I'm going to take a circle node and just draw a circle right over here. As you can see, the marker is completely removed, but if you can see here, it's not tracked, right? For tracking, I can simply create a layer. Just go into the tracker, Mocha tracker, just go into foreground, and let's track and see how it looks like. It's not that bad, but you can see I have accidentally turned on shear and perspective. In this shot, I don't think we need all these transformations. I'm going to retrack it. It's not that an easy shot to track because you can see there are some color variations here because of the light changes, but this definitely looks like a decent track for at least this purpose. I'm going to adjust this a bit. Let's keep it over here, and if you go into the output mode, you can see you can turn off the overlay by pressing 0 in the keyboard and just play and see how it looks like. That's perfect. If you're seeing some sharp edges or something, you can just blur the layer, or even you can tune into these properties. There are lots of options. As I just mentioned, I have made a specific tutorial on InPaint, so I'm not going to explain all these properties and all these things. Just check out that tutorial. Yeah, this is one method. Or let's remove something from this side. So I made sure I have connected a roto node into my paint node using data pipes. Just go into the roto node and click on the tracker properties. This time I'm using point tracker. Alt click. Oops, that was a really bad track. So here I'm going to take point tracker again and go into the last frame. Just drop a point tracker. If you right click over here, go into channel. I'm just choosing red channel here because the marker is mostly visible in the red channel. Let's track and see how this result looks like. Cool, so it looks great, not that bad. So create a layer, apply this tracking data into this layer. So layer 1 should be the track layer for this marker. So go into the paint node, transform layer 1, and I can simply use drag tool here. Now select all our strokes and always make sure you selected the right transform data. Click on match move. I have chosen all frames here. Click on this play button. You can see the marker is completely painted out. Yeah, this looks awesome. So I know this is a pretty straightforward shot where we can remove the stuff very easily. So let's go and check out another footage which I downloaded from Action VFX free asset package or something. Marker removal 2, and you can see. So this footage is downloaded from actionvfx.com. They have lots of footages in their library. This is not a paid promotion, so check out their website. Here I'm making sure my last frame will be 93, typing in 93 here. Let's play and see how our footage looks like. Also in this shot we have comparatively a different kind of camera movement. Zooming out, we need at least 2-point track here. And also one more interesting thing is that there are some light flickers and light color changes here, so that will also affect our work. Usually I see most people do this kind of shots in Nuke using transform mask. It's easy, but in some cases, just like this, where there are color differences between one area to the other, matching grade in those kind of situations are very tricky. But using silhouette, these kind of situations are very easy to handle. As you can see, there is a slight color change here. Also, the interesting thing is that there are interactions. Obviously, the first step should be tracking. So let's go into the roto node. I'm going to track this manually. If you have camera data, you can export point trackers from there. Go to tracker properties, point tracker, and making sure this is the last frame where I can get access of this tracker completely. So I'm going to add a point here, maybe at this edge, and let's track backwards. As I just mentioned earlier, you can use channels for tracking. So let's track. Let's try this frame. Increase the search area. We got a decent track here. In this shot, we have sort of a different camera move that is like zooming out. We might need to create a 2-point track. Let's create a point over here. Both of these markers are in the same plane. So let's track and see how this goes. It looks okay to me. Selecting both the trackers and go into the first frame, selecting the layer as well. Apply. We can access rotation as well as scaling. Click on OK. Now go to paint node. Already made sure layer 1 is selected. Let's paint out this marker. In this frame, I'm going to take drag tool. Looks good. Select all the paint history and make sure you have checked this match move option. Yep, just click on play selected. Nope, you shouldn't do that. Why? Because we have character interactions here. Just find which is the frame where we can see the entire marker. So it should be till frame 47. Just go into the last frame and select all the stroke, choose custom and type in 47 to 93. Now click on play selected events. As you can see, we have painted out till frame 47 and next few frames we are going to skip. And now we have to do the second half. So let's paint out this frame. I don't want the tutorial to be that long, so I'm gonna stop it here. One other trick which you can do here is that go to 43 and you can take clone tool and choose output, click on caps lock or Q, turn off the subpixel and also make sure you're inside the onion skin overlay. Just increase the frame. You can see at frame 47 we have a clean green screen, so I can just match this frame. The reason why I'm not using this method is that I have to explain manual painting in another tutorial. So here I'm going to follow my first method, that is going into frame 1 and painting it out from scratch, making sure my paint strokes are selected. Also the work range is as per my need. Click on playback. So now we have painted out that stroke in every frames except the frames where we have interaction. I can simply come into that specific frame, just paint it off. This can be painted from the next frame and this frame can be painted from the previous frame, which obviously I'm not going to explain in this particular video. There will be a follow-up tutorial for manual paint. We'll be explaining that in that particular video. Yep, so this looks, let's go into stabilize view and check how the result looks like. It looks pretty decent here. There we go. We have painted out that marker from this shot. Using this simple method, you can paint out any number of markers from any kind of shots with any kind of camera motion. It's that simple. So start using Silhouette for your marker removal shots. Just like always, if you like this tutorial, please hit that like button and share this with your colleagues who are in need of paint knowledge. I'll see you in my next one. Thank you for watching. Hey everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Silhouette Paint Masterclass, and in today's episode we are going to check out what frame painting is. Frame painting is kind of an amazing skill needed for every paint prep artist. Let's suppose if you have to remove or paint out some stuff which is moving every single frames, you can't utilize any kind of tracking informations. For example, you can't utilize 3D tracks, you can't utilize point tracks as well as planar tracking. In those kind of cases, you definitely need to paint out every single frames. So in my experience, frame painting is just a balance between artistry as well as consistency. If you are a good artist who knows to create a clean plate for a single frame and you don't have any knowledge of utilizing that beautifully painted frame throughout the work range or at least to the adjacent frames, you are definitely not a good paint artist. But in Silhouette, we have such amazing tools which we can make use for getting this type of works done pretty easily. I hope this made sense to you. So here I have a footage and I'm going to do a playback. It's kind of a handheld camera motion. We are going to paint out this helmet which is falling from his head. So as you can see, this is not that easy because every single frame the object is traveling at a different speed and we have to reveal back different areas in every frame. By the way, this footage is from the Action VFX practice library. They have lots of practice materials there, so definitely check out their website. Coming back to the tutorial, so here I'm not going to frame paint every single frame because I just want to make this tutorial less than 15 minutes. So I'm going to pick a couple of frames in this work range and show you how I will do this work and what all are the tools inside the software which I will make use for getting this work done. So basically I'm going to create a clean plate for specific frame and we'll use that to clean up adjacent frames. Let's play and see which is that frame. Obviously the most important tool for frame painting is going to be clone tool. By the way, if you guys didn't check out my video about clone tool properties and how important is clone tool, please pause this tutorial here and go back to that video and check out that. I have explained every single properties of clone tool in that video. Here I'm not going to go every single step. So here I have couple of frames here where I can see his head without the helmet and within the same lighting conditions as well. Yeah, let's pick this frame as our source frame and we can just take clone tool and the shortcut for that is C. Let's type in 32 and yeah, we can reveal back some stuff from 32 into frame 31. Matching this, I'll turn off the subpixel because it's kind of blurry. I'm matching this exactly similar to the frame 31. As you can see right now, we have most part of his head revealed back, and you can see still we have lots of things to do. Next step would be to erase back unwanted areas. We have some color differences here, so I will take drag tool and click on color channel, and let's drag this a bit. It's matched perfectly, so go back to clone tool. Let's go to frame 33. That's a bit blurry because we have motion blur in this frame, but that's okay. We have something over here, so let's paint that out. By the way, if you don't have any source here, you can simply use drag tool to create that texture. Okay, so I'm going to speed up the process a little bit here. Yep, so it's done. I have his head revealed in frame 31, and now you can make use of frame 31 to paint out frame 30. How you can do that? Go back to clone properties, make sure the source is selected as output, and let's type in 31 as our source frame, just resetting it. And now let's match frame 31 for frame 32. It's not that tough because there is not that much movement between frame 31 and 30. It's kind of easy to match, I believe. Right now I'm not doing it very precisely. Reveal back all unwanted areas. Now let's play and see how the result looks like. We have to match even precisely, I believe. Now you can see it is matching perfectly, and we have his head revealed back for a couple of frames here. So this is the process which we have to follow for frame painting. Just need to clean a single frame and use that frame as a source for the adjacent frames or the frames before. And in some cases what you have to do is create a clean frame for this frame. This is just an example. Use those two frames to blend in between. Yeah, this is all about frame painting, and let's paint out one more frame here, frame 45 or 46. This is just like a bonus for you guys because why not one more frame? So here I can simply analyze the footage. Okay, so I can see what's behind this helmet in this frame 48. So come back to frame 46, type in 48, or you can use these sliders as well. And next step is to match the transformations. Cool, so obviously it's not that perfect, but you can definitely spend time on every single frame, making it as beautiful and 100% precise. Finally, I just want to say this again, it's all about consistency as well as artistry. If you have good artistry skills, spend time learning how to be consistent. Or if you're lagging in artistry skills, practice more by doing lots of clean plates. I believe my second or third tutorial in this series is all about creating clean plates, so follow that for improving your artistry skills. Like always, if you guys felt this tutorial is informative and you learned something from this, please hit that like button and share this with your colleagues. And more tutorials are coming up, so stay tuned, and thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Silhouette Paint Masterclass. In today's episode, we are going to do some wire removal or rope removal or whatever name you guys are calling this task using some simple tricks inside Silhouette. I'm pretty sure most of us hates doing wire removal work because it's kind of complicated, or in other words, I would say it needs a lot of manual effort. That's why these tasks are generally called as manual painting. But there are a few settings inside Silhouette which can definitely help you to ease your work a little bit. We are going to see that in this tutorial. So this is not a tutorial for wire removal, but specifically where we are going to paint out wire using this simple trick. So let's jump into the tutorial. So here we have the footage, and it's not that difficult. Why? Because it's just 20 frames. If you have like hundreds of frames for this shot, then this shot will definitely look complicated. So if you guys would have watched my last tutorial, we can paint out this using clone tool. Here we have clone tool and all the properties right over here. We can definitely use this offset option to paint this out just like the last tutorial. By the way, if you guys missed watching my last tutorial, please go ahead and watch that before jumping into this one, because I have covered basics in that tutorial. So so just a disclaimer. I can go into the first frame. Here I'm going to remove this wire. In the third frame, I have the source of this brick. Go into the first frame and just type in 3, and now just manually match the transformations. So the not so beautiful thing in this shot or in this kind of work is just matching the transformations of frames which we offsetted. Here I have used third frame, so let's paint it and see how it looks like. It looks decent, but obviously we have to match the reference frame in every single frames. If the plate have perspective changes and all, then that's going to be a bit difficult for you. But here we can use one cool trick inside Silhouette. It definitely helps a lot to match the reference frame automatically. How to do that? It's very simple. So just go into roto node, and you can see this is not that complicated camera movement. So I will just use maybe a 2-point track. Basically we have to track the footage. Let's add a point right over here. Let's see how the track looks like. Cool, so definitely look pretty decent to me. So let's move on to some other areas. Maybe I will use smoker tracker for this area. You can simply click on preview button to see if you have anything specifically, or definitely you can check the channels as well. Just turn off the preview button and red channel, green, blue. So here we have a point. Let's give it a try. Not sure we will be successful, but let's give it a try. Track forward. So it looks quite decent to me. As this is just a tutorial, I'm gonna think it's a perfect track, and let's apply this tracking data into this layer. Applying that in the first frame. I'm just turning everything on. Okay, and go back to paint properties. Inside transform pull down menu, select layer 1. All this process definitely resembles using auto paint. To this point it's exactly the same, but now it's going to be a bit different. So all done. Let's take the clone tool. Now we have painted frame 1 and now frame 2. I'll reset everything. Fourth frame is fine for removing this wire from frame 2. I will type in frame 4. Now if you turn on onion skin overlay, it's not perfectly matched, but if you just turn on source match move here, now if you see, reference frame is definitely matching right over here. So I can simply paint, and now frame 1 and 2 is done. Go into frame 3. I'm not gonna adjust anything right over here. If you just turn on onion skin, you can see this frame is also matched almost there, like 90%, maybe just a few adjustments. I'm gonna remove it again. Maybe this as well. What is that? Yep, remove that. Let's go into frame 12. Rope is just right over here. I don't have to do anything. Just use the perfect reference frame. For me, this looks perfect. It's 14th frame. My track can be improved a bit. I don't have to worry a lot. I can just simply paint and go every frame. This technique definitely helps you to paint out ropes or wires in any shots. Not that easy, but definitely it helps to reduce your work. One more frame. I know my track was not that great, so definitely match this a little more accurate. And now let's paint and see. Yep, so this is all about using match move for wire removal task. This is just basic. You can track different objects, different areas separately and use that as different match move source. It's all about analyzing the footage and using the perfect technique wherever you have to. So like always, I hope this tutorial is super useful to every one of you. If you have learned something from this, please hit that like button and let me know in comments if you have any feedbacks or any suggestions. So until my next video, it's Manoj signing off. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Silhouette Paint Masterclass. In today's episode, we are going to learn edge fixing inside Silhouette. Edge fixing is kind of an important task for compositors. As paint prep artists, we always use edge fixing in our work, and most of us use Nuke for edge fixing because it's much more easier and much more efficient. But through this tutorial, I just want to give you an introduction about doing edge fix inside Silhouette, at least for basic tasks. And here I'm just going to use paint node, not any other nodes from the software. Let's jump into the tutorial. Cool, so here I have a shot. Let's do playback and see how it looks like. It's a very simple, straightforward shot. Let's suppose my task is to paint out this light bouquet which is moving from screen left to screen right. It's kind of easy, but let's suppose my client's request is to reveal back the lighting on this stick. Now it's much more challenging because as soon as this light bouquet reaches here, you can see the edge is, behaving very weirdly. So if we are removing this stuff and revealing back in the edge, there will be issues, and we do edge fix to solve that. So here, first step would be to track the shot and do roto for the FG objects. As my shot don't have any kind of camera motion, I don't have to do tracking. And pending thing is that we have to do roto for this stick. So for that, I have to go into roto node. Cool. So I'm gonna take Bezier here, just draw a spline. I'm gonna draw this very roughly. As this shot and this object don't have any camera motion, I don't have to animate this spline. Hence my roto work is done. So go back to paint node. My next step would be to create a clean plate. So I chose frame 100 for the clean plate. Let's take clone tool, maybe type in 120 because that's the last frame. And if you press Q or caps lock in the keyboard, you can view reference frame in the viewer. I can reveal back this area. just painting in maximum data I can reveal back from the reference frame. I just did that. Take eraser tool, and now I can use drag tool to drag these pixels all around here. Take blur tool, 21 works. Another thing which I have to do in this clean plate is to just remove the stick, because I just need to maintain the lighting changes in front of the stick. So here I'm gonna paint out the stick. Here in this case you can use color tool as well, because there are no complicated textures. You can simply choose a color and paint it out, but I'm always comfortable with drag tool, so I'm going to use drag tool here. I can improve this bit further, but I'm going to leave it here. Maybe fine tune this a little bit, because I can see some lighting differences right over here. My clean plate is done. Go to frame 101, keep output as the source and frame number 100 as the reference frame. Decrease the softness because I just want the edge to be pretty sharp. Now select the paint strokes which I just drew. As there is no camera motion in the shot, I'm not gonna worry about turning on match move or choosing the right track layer. So everything is done. I'm just gonna choose current to end. Now just click on play selected event forward. Yep, that's done. We just painted out that light bokeh from the shot, and up next we have to reveal back the stick. For that we already have the roto for the stick. Just click on paint properties. If you click on show shapes, you can see the same shape from the roto node. Why? Because we have connected the data pipes from paint node into the same roto node. Then we just need to click on obey alpha. If you see the original shot, we can see there is some blur in the footage. So for that I can just click on the shape, and inside the properties we can just keep a blur of maybe 6. Let's check the alpha and see. No, it's not enough. 15, 13 is fine, but I definitely need to adjust or grow my edge. That means, and blur of maybe 11. So this looks okay to me. We'll just go into the paint node, just take eraser node. I'm gonna click alt in the keyboard and just reveal back. Select the current brush stroke. Now just do the same, maybe work range, because I'm just doing that from the first frame. Let's click on play selected events forward and see how it looks like. Now I'm gonna turn off the overlay. It looks perfect till here. In the last few frames I can see there are some issues in the edge, and here comes the process of edge fix. Edge fix is kind of an easy task if we have this kind of easy shot to do, because this is a straightforward shot and we don't have to worry about the camera motion or the translation of the object. I'm turning on the overlay because I just want to see my brush. Maybe turn off the show shapes because I don't want to see that. I made sure obey alpha is turned on because now I'm gonna drag this color from this edge into the blurred region, and turning on this option will help me to restrict stroke going out from the edge. I took drag tool and let's drag. Cool. As I am done with this, I have selected the entire group and just click on play selected event backward. There are few issues here. That's because of the lighting changes happening here. We can definitely fine tune this. I just recorded this in a rush, but obviously you can spend more time to fine tune this. I hope you understood the basic process which you can make use for doing this kind of task inside Silhouette. If you feel like this is too much, you can reduce the value of blur and grow, and then drag the texture or color into the edges, which will help you to fine tune this even better. Yep, so this is all about edge fixing inside Silhouette. I know this is kind of a basic shot, but you can apply the same principle in any other shots by analyzing the footage properly. Yep, so I hope you learned something from this tutorial, and if yes, please hit that like button and comment down your suggestions and feedbacks. Again, until next tutorial, it's Manu signing off. Thank you for watching. Hey everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Silhouette Paint Masterclass. In today's episode, we are going to check out output node inside Silhouette, and as the name suggests, it helps us to render out all the paint work into any other compositing applications which we usually use. I always use Nuke as my compositing application. Definitely we can import images which we rendered from Silhouette into Nuke. So let's jump into the tutorial. Here, this is my plate and I already did some paint work. So let's show you what the result looks like. Here I have painted this vent from this building. Now I have to export my paint work from Silhouette into Nuke. So how to do that? It's pretty simple. In Silhouette, inside nodes, In the Silhouette tab, we have a couple of nodes here for rendering out. The first one of that is output node and the other one is output multipart. When we are creating a new session, there is always an output node created along with the roto and pane nodes. If you click on the output node, properties opens up. At first, we have an option to choose the file format. We have lots of options here, but I believe the mostly used option by everyone will be OpenEXR. Up next, we have compression option, which helps us to compress the file size. Usually I keeps this as zip, which is the default option. Some people tend to use DWAA and DWAB because it is light in size. Let's keep this as zip as of now. We have an option for automatic data window. Let me explain what is this. If you did some paint work in this footage and there is an alpha for that, you can use that alpha to crop the paint work while rendering. This just acts like auto crop inside Nuke. So if you prefer to render that way, you can turn this option on. Next, we have an option where we can choose the right folder structure and also type in the right file name. Click on this icon here. This is the folder where I'm gonna render my output. Here I can type in name of the file. In my case, it's render. Mostly you have to follow the pipeline structure in your company or in your workflow. After that, .4# for the frame padding. And also I like to type in the file extension as well. After that, just click on save button. As soon as you do that, you can see the folder structure here and the file name. You can see the entire thing written over here inside the sample window, including the file extension as well. Here we have an option for typing in metadata. This is most sort of a pipeline stuff. Up next, we have the option for choosing the channels. For example, you are rendering paint work, you can choose RGB along with alpha or just RGB as well. I always prefer to render RGB and alpha after my paint work. In other case, if you're doing some roto inside Silhouette and want to export mattes, you can just turn off RGB and just export alpha as well. And also there is an option for choosing depth as the channels for your render. Next, we have option for choosing the render views. That means left or right. This is mostly applied for studio workflow. For me, I'm just keeping both. We have an option for pre-multiply. If you have an RGB channel along with alpha in your paint workflow, you can pre-multiply as RGBA inside Silhouette as well. You don't need to do that separately in any other applications. Simply do that if you wish. Already explained what this sample window is. Just a description of the entire folder structure and the file name and file extension as well. Finally, if you are done with all these settings, you can click on render option. Before that, there is an option for resetting all this. Click on render. In this pop-up, there are a few settings which will help you to customize the range and size of the render which you're going to do. First, we have an option where we can choose which output node has to be rendered. That means if I'm keeping all output nodes, all the output nodes in this specific session will be rendered. But if I'm keeping selected output nodes, you can select individual output node and that will be rendered. By default, it is selected output nodes. Here we have work range. That means if you want to specifically render the range which you're working, you can choose work range. Also, there is an option for rendering all the frames and current frame, custom frame as well, where you can type in the specific frames which you worked. I'm keeping this as work range. This option will be automatically filled according to the range of work which you choose here. For me, I choose work range and my work range starts from frame 1 to frame 100. Frame 1 is automatically typed in over here. Next, we have an option for field handling. This is mostly used when you're working on NTSC or PAL footages. I'm keeping this as none because I'm not working in that way. If you keep this as interlace, you have an option to choose which type of field dominance you need for interlacing. I'm keeping this as none. So that's why this option is disabled here. Next, we have an option for choosing the right resolution for your render. By default, it's 1:1. That means the original resolution. But if you want to render a proxy version of your paintwork, you can choose any of this option: 2:1, 3:1, 4:1. This will scale down your render and decrease your render time, which in most cases will help you to check if you are on the right path or not. I'm keeping this as 1:1. Finally, we have an option to select what's the data window which we are going to use for rendering this output. There is session, ROI and DOD. Session is the session settings, that's the original footage resolution. ROI is region of interest and DOD is the domain of definition, if I am right. And there are specific tutorials in my channel for rendering ROI and DOD. Please refer to that. Mostly this will be used if you have overscan in your footage or if you're making a large clean plate larger than the original resolution. In my case, it's session here. And you can click on preview and validate, as this helps to preview your work while it's being rendered. Once you are okay with all the settings, you can simply click on cancel if you wish to cancel this render. Also, there is an option to save these specific settings. You can simply click on apply button, or if you are okay with all the settings, you can simply click on render. That's it. Rendering is going on and all our works are getting exported as EXR files. Let's cancel this now, and I just want to show you one more thing. Cool. So in my paint node, if you see here, we have an option where we can connect output node as output image, and there is also an option called paint only. This is my favorite option for rendering. I'm going to connect my output pipe into the paint only option in the paint node, keeping all the settings as before. Here, instead of clicking on render button, I'm using the shortcut that is Ctrl R. Everything looks okay to me. Click on render. Now if you see, our render is so fast and only the area where our paintwork is getting rendered. This is pretty handy if you want to improve your render efficiency. Definitely this will speed up your workflow. Finally, there is one more node inside Silhouette which we can make use for rendering. Just go into nodes and there is output multipart. You can simply type in tab in the trees window here, type in output. So choose that. What's the difference between output and output multipart? If you want to render one specific input, you can use output node, which mostly every one of us will be using. But in some extreme cases where you have to render multiple inputs at a single time, you can use output multipart for that specific purpose. Let's suppose I have to render checkerboard, one more color bars. Let's take paint node. I'm gonna connect that into color bars. Checkerboard as well. So here I have 3 input source and 3 paint node. That means I did work on 3 different plates and I have to render all my work at a single time. In such situations, you can use output multipart. You can connect input 1 to paint node, input 2 to checkerboard, and the next pipe into the color bars. Let's suppose if you're rendering from here and taking that into Nuke, if you go inside the layer, you have access for all your paint works on all the different plates which you worked in Silhouette inside the same render, which is pretty awesome. You don't have to render multiple outputs in multiple folders with different file names and all. You can do that once with a single node, output multipart. I have made a detailed tutorial about output multipart few years back. It's an old tutorial but definitely very informative. If you're not able to find that, please comment it down. I will reply you with the link. Yep, so this is all about rendering from Silhouette, and like always, if you feel like this tutorial is informative, please hit that like button and share this with your colleagues who already learned how to paint inside Silhouette and looking for ways to render that out. Till the next tutorial, it's Manu signing off. Thank you for watching. Hey everyone, welcome back to the last tutorial of this Silhouette Paint Masterclass. By far you would have learned how to paint inside Silhouette and how to utilize all the settings for your work, and also how to render that from Silhouette to take that into any other compositing applications. In this tutorial, I'm going to give you an intro about few preference settings inside Silhouette which you have access for customizing according to your workflow. For that, just go into File, Preferences. We have lots of customizable options inside the preference. As this is a master paint course, I'm just gonna show you the settings available inside the paint preference. At first, we have the option to choose the outline color for the brush in the viewer. By default, it's green. Also, we have an option to choose the opacity as well. We have an option for choosing the crosshair cursor. I will just click on cancel. If you see my brush, it's just a circle. But if you go into preference and choose on as my crosshair cursor option, click on apply, okay. Now you can see there is a plus sign just in the center of the circle, which is quite annoying for me. So I always keep this as off. Go back to preference, off, apply. Next we have an option to hide brush outline while painting. I always turn this off. Let me show you what this means. Apply, okay. Now if I'm doing some paint work, let's take color tool and you can see our brush outline is not visible right now. That means when you're doing paint work, you won't be able to see where your brush is, which is kind of annoying for me. So instead of that, I always turn off this option. Click on apply. Now, if I'm painting, I can definitely see my brush here. Next, we have an option for locking the presets as soon as you import the paint presets, which is not that important as of now. Next, we have output unpainted frame. This is kind of an important option and I always keep this on. What's the use of this? So if you are painting out few frames here and there in this work range and you are rendering that out, here I have turned this option on. That means I can render the entire work range without any missing frames. But if you turn this off, you are going to render that specific frames which you worked. If you are importing this render in any other compositing applications, just like Nuke, it will throw us missing frames error, which is kind of annoying. So I always keep this on. Next, we have an option to control the pressure for the paint strokes, which I always keep as default. and also there is an option to apply pressure for the Wacom pen and tablet, which always is on by default. Up next, we have few settings specifically for clone brush. First one of that is absolute frame numbers. You are painting on frame number 1 and using frame 10 as your clone offset, and you are moving into frame number 2. Now in the clone offset option, the frame will be 11 instead of 10. Next, we have an option to choose the right align type, specifically the color of the alignment. So this is mostly visible inside the onion skin overlay. So we have an option to choose black or gray or a mix of both. So I always keep this as gray. Next, we have an option for allowing adjustments to auto grade. By default, if you are turning on auto grade, you don't have the access to adjust the other grade properties. But if you turn this on, you can definitely adjust the other grade properties, which can be definitely handy at times. Next, we have an option to choose default filter. I always like to keep this as Catmull Roam. Here we have an exclamation sign which tells us to restart the software. So for your information, if you are changing filter, definitely restart the software to apply the changes. Also, there is an option for choosing the default source. I always like to keep this as output. Restart required to apply this change. Default subpixel state. Likes to keep this as off because that's the way I work. Restart required. Incremental offset, which is kind of important, and I likes to turn this on. So basically, what is incremental offset? It just controls whether the clone offset starts from the last offsetted position or the location where you clicked right now. Just explore and choose the right option for you. Also, there is an option to choose the right color for your overlay in the viewer. Reset frame number with transform. That means if you're clicking on reset inside clone properties, along with resetting all the transformations, it just resets the frame number as well, which is kind of useful in many cases. Show offset. If you want to see the connecting line between the clone offset, turn this option on. And there are few options for customizing colors for source outline and the secondary source outline as well. Finally, I never turn this option on because I don't want to go back to the older versions of Silhouette because Silhouette is much improved now, so always off. Use stereo offset when painting right and left views. This is mostly applied on stereo workflow, which is not relevant in this specific course, so skipping this one now. Finally, there is an option inside history as lock selection. So what this does is pretty simple. For example, if you're selecting few paint strokes inside the paint history and you're moving into the next frame, your selection will be gone. And so if you want to see the same selection in all the frames which you go, definitely turn on lock selection and this will help you. Yep, so this is all about the preference settings, and if you choose all the right option for you, click on apply and okay, that's it. Cool, so task is done. Silhouette paint course is ready for you to learn, and I want to thank every one of you who supported me to make this happen. I know I promised you this series last year, but due to various circumstances I was not able to do that, and here I am delivering entire series free for every one of you. I'm really looking forward to all of your feedbacks regarding this course and how it helped you in learning the amazing beautiful paint node inside Silhouette. Looking forward to your comments. Till next time, it's Manu signing off. Thank you for watching.